This podcast may contain paid advertisements, but more on that later. Welcome to the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, your go-to resource for unraveling the intricacies of business and leadership, honing in on the essence of bootstrapping a business from scratch. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a dedicated bootstrapper, or a leader navigating life's various challenges, this podcast is crafted just for you. I'm Isaiah O'Connor, your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, and my mission is to guide you towards personal and professional growth. Let's embark on this journey together. Okay, and welcome back to part 3. We are finally hitting the end of my 3-part series on a living wage. To catch you up, in the first episode, I spoke on the difference between a living wage and a minimum wage. I also talked about how these two concepts are confused and often conflated. I also busted some myths using statistics and research about who's making minimum wage, what their living condition is like, and how that affects them. In part 2, I continued on with talking about some other considerations people don't think about when it comes to what a wage is. For example, a person making, say, minimum wage at Walmart is also getting medical benefits and also getting a retirement package and an equal match to a certain degree on a 401k. So when you combine their total compensation package, it's much higher than just minimum wage. So I talked about other considerations such as that and more. And now we're going into the third and last episode, which I'm calling the ripple effect. Because when you raise minimum wage, when you have government mandated minimums, the ripple effects in the economy are a lot more widespread, and there's a lot more unintended consequences to this that people do not take into consideration in this conversation. And like I said in the very first episode, this is skating the political line, and I know that very clearly. However, it impacts business, and in the broader sense, I am making this about the facts and data and not about politics, although it is a political subject, which is unavoidable in this case. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into my discussion on the ripple effect and my viewpoint on how well you should pay your employees. Spoiler alert, I think you should pay your employees as best and as well as you possibly can. Just as an aside. Anyway, let's get into this. Economic ripple effects of raising a minimum wage, especially a massive jump like a $5 an hour universal jump as they did in California. We're not talking about a small jump. We're not just talking about a local cost of living expense jump across the board based on the local cost of living or anything else. It's a massive, just mandatory, I can't think of the word, just we're going to say $20 an hour because that's what we think. Pulled out of thin air, arbitrary number. They just pulled a number out of the air, $20 an hour, now that's that. What's the impact? Well, as I mentioned before, your costs go up, you raise your prices, people don't buy from you anymore. That changes spending effect, your habits. Problem is, now you're not making as much money. You're not selling as much stuff, which means you're not buying as much supplies from your supply chain. So now people are not selling as much of their product to you. Now they're hurting, and now they have to lay off employees. Now they have to raise prices. Now they have to do things to to recover and recoup their loss as well, which can cause the other people not in your industry to raise prices elsewhere. Just as an example, McDonald's. You raise prices on McDonald's, on fast food, burger joints. People don't go out and buy meat. They don't go buy burgers. Now they're not selling nearly as many burgers. They don't need as much beef. They're not buying as much beef. Now the beef suppliers are losing money too. Now in order to cut costs down, they're laying off people, and now they're raising the price of their beef to everyone in the industry, which means by raising minimum wage at McDonald's, you're raising the cost of ground beef at your local supermarket. Not necessarily, I can't guarantee that, but I'm saying just an example of how that could work out. The cost, it's one of those hidden costs, those hidden things that people don't realize, because raising minimum wage raises inflation, because now the beef costs more and the milk costs more, because that's associated with the beef supply, right? So they have to raise the cost of milk. They have to raise the cost of meat, which of course the cost of milk raises the cost of butter, which raises the cost of cheese. Again, cheese is also going to go up because now, maybe not cheese, but that's another story. But because now McDonald's is not buying cheese. McDonald's is not buying potatoes. McDonald's is not buying all these different paper packaged products, all the different stuff they buy. When they lose, it starts rippling effect and causing everyone else to be hurt in the process. There's a ripple effect. Matter of fact, it's similar during COVID. One of the types of business that they shut down as being a what's the word that they used? I'm blanking. Non-essential business was the manufacturers of plastic packaging. They're non-essential workers. They're shut down during COVID. Again, politicians with no idea of what's going on with the economy, with anything else, took a single issue and stuck to it, which is what I complained about earlier. You have to look at the whole picture. They did not realize that these manufacturers of the plastic goods were the ones supplying the bags and the wrapping materials for the grocery stores to use, for the meat, for your food, for your frozen goods. Everything that comes in plastic that you need to get food requires those industries to be effective. With those shut down overnight, whoopsie, the supply chain is disrupted, and now we have a worse problem on our hands. Same thing. You got to think about all the potential impacts. You raise the prices, a bunch of restaurants go out of business simultaneously, because it's not just a single restaurant. A single restaurant can go out of business, which happens all the time, does not really do much for the supply chain. But a massive restaurant chain like McDonald's, like Burger King, if they start losing money, if they start raising prices, if they start hurting, they have such an oversized effect on the overall economy when it comes to the supply chain. That can be a big thing, where it could really cause massive economic devastation. Again, not looked at. Another thing is commercial real estate. When a fast food chain closes an area, that can impact the commercial real estate. Oh, I know, for example, I'll shop closer to places with food than places without food. I've got kids. If we get hungry, if things go on, I would like to know that I can buy food somewhere in the area. And if there's no food going to be in that area, I'm not going to go to that area to shop. So a fast food chain closes, and say a mall, and multiple, say not a mall, but say just in a little industrial area, people won't go there as much. It hurts everyone. And then when you lose benefits, now you've lost employees have lost benefits. Some companies have to cut benefits to cover the cost of the thing. That affects this, healthcare industry, the services. People can't afford healthcare. People can get more sick. They're less likely to go to the hospital because now they've just lost their insurance. So yeah, that can be worse. And then government revenue. Problem is, the government loves to tax everything. And the more employees you have, the more taxes the government makes. The less employees you have, the less taxes the government makes. The less people work, the less taxes the government makes. So this hurts the government in taxes. So, as you can see, my kind of long rant going over, there's a lot more to look at when it comes to a quote-unquote living wage versus a minimum wage. Because there's so many other factors that goes into looking at that. Now, as I mentioned before, if my only gripe is with mandated minimums, mandated government mandates on living wages, on minimum wages, and trying to control something that shouldn't be controlled by the government because government is not built to handle that. They can't move. They're not flexible enough to do it. I mean, like I mentioned last one, raising the minimum wage in America as the national one requires a literal act of Congress to do that. That's why the minimum wage was so low for so many years, was because you couldn't get Congress to behave, and then it becomes a political football, and people start getting all political about it instead of practical about it and fighting back and forth, fighting back and forth, fighting back and forth. And 9 times out of 10, they raise it way too high than if they raise it at all. And then it overshoots and it causes inflation to go worse, which is already bad. And yeah, I don't like government getting involved where government shouldn't get involved, in my opinion. Now, full disclosure, politically, I'm just pretty much not really I'm not Republican, I'm not a Democrat. I lean, I guess, a little bit libertarian. I just don't like big government. That's kind of my political stance. I don't like government doing things that government shouldn't be doing because they don't know what they're doing. You don't get a lot of businessmen in government, people that understand business. You don't get a lot of people in government that understands what the average Joe does to make a living. You get a lot of Harvard and Ivy League school people who don't know what business is like. So I don't like them getting involved in business because that's not what they're good at. That's not their skill level. It's just me. But so with this, I'm just looking at the results. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at everything else on that. Again, I'm not backing any political party here. I'm not saying that my ideas are conservative or liberal or left or right. I'm just saying the government should not be involved in this type of decision making because it's too multifaceted. Most government officials have no clue not all, but no clue what goes into running a business, what wages, what all these factors factor in. They just know that, in my opinion, most government officials, their only job is to get elected and stay elected. That's kind of their viewpoint. I'm being a little bit, what's the word? A little hyperbolic on that. Yeah, I know there are some government officials, usually in small towns, that actually do good stuff. But a government official needs to know how to get elected and know how to make people vote for them, and telling people they're going to give more money by raising minimum wage looks good, even though when you look through the microscope at it, it's not really that simple and it actually hurts. Now, with all that, I don't like the government forcing companies to pay wages, but let's take a look at a company that does a good job. Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is probably the most profitable per location fast food industry in the United States. And I say that per location because I believe Burger King and McDonald's are more profitable overall. But it's like 20,000 locations, 30,000 locations, 100,000 locations. I don't even know how many locations McDonald's had. McDonald's has so many locations. It's ridiculous. Versus Chick-fil-A has about 2,000 locations total. They're closed in the evenings and they're closed on Sundays. So they have less time open, they have less restaurants, and they are more overall profitable than McDonald's, than Burger King. And they pay, and they always have, pays above the federal minimum wage for all positions. Hey, look at that. They are committed to offering competitive competition to their employees. So they pay higher than minimum wage. They give them really good benefits. Health insurance, retirement plans, paid time off, educational scholarships. They pay for you to go to school. And they are really good at compensating their employees. And because of this, they also prioritize creating a positive work environment. It's good to work there. It's fun to work there. I've talked to people. It's fun. It's nice. They like working there. They're not stressed about it. It's a fun place to work. And the thing is, when they set their wages based and benefits based on the market conditions and the competition. And they're ignoring government mandates because they think they're too low or whatever. They look at what do they need to do to attract the best people. That's the thing. They're trying to attract great talent, and to attract great talent, even new kids are up and coming. They don't know how to work, but they've got the potential. You pay them good. That's it. They're flexible. They pay higher than minimum wage, and so when there are minimum wage hikes, they can increase. They can absorb that hike a lot easier because they're already paying more than minimum wage, if not quite the level of the government. But they can adjust that a lot easier. So this type of success, paying above minimum wage, taking really good care of their employees, is an example of why you don't need the government to push a quote-unquote living wage to take care of people. You don't need the government to push a minimum wage, a living wage, for employees to have a good place to work, to have good benefits. And again, back to the beginning, the vast majority of people who work minimum wage jobs do not need to work minimum wage to live. I'll say that again. The vast majority of people working minimum wage jobs do not survive. They do not live off of. They don't need the minimum wage job as a living wage. It's just not statistically accurate. It's not factually true. And when you try to force a living wage into an area where people don't need a living wage, it just breaks the whole system. As I said, I have friends still in California. They're telling me how expensive everything is, and it's really hard to live, and everything's high, and you can't buy a hamburger because it's too expensive. It's ridiculous, the cost. Now, on a side note, to be completely fair, some of these big companies, like McDonald's, are also still paying some of their managers and stuff a lot higher wage than fits their position, considering the market conditions. So, yeah, McDonald's is making record profits. So there's that. There is some room to criticize the businesses for not treating their employees well, for maybe not paying them enough money to begin with, because they paid only the minimum wage. Like I said, remember what I said, that if you tell a company that they only have to pay the minimum wage, that's all they'll pay. They're not going to try to pay more unless you're a company like Chick-fil-A. Or in California, speaking of California, In-N-Out Burger, same thing. They're one of the more profitable burger joints in California. They've done super well. They take amazingly good care of their employees. They're very similar to Chick-fil-A on their business. Their business models are very, very similar. Small menu, drive customer loyalty, pay their employees well, take good care of them, provide great service. Very, very similar, and they both do very, very well considering. So, again, my my rant, as it were here, is not against paying people good money. It's not saying that giant corporations like McDonald's should be treated nicely and not have to pay a giant minimum wage. I am saying that if it was possible to remove a mandatory minimum wage and let the market forces adjust and force companies to actually compete with each other to get the best workers possible by offering higher wages to attract, like I said, attract people, to kind of sell their position to the people they want to hire, I think that would raise wages up across the board. It would raise overall job satisfaction. It would raise overall profitability of the companies because now they'll have happier employees and lower turnover rate. They won't be spending so much money hiring people. They won't be spending so much money trying to get people into work. If I remember correctly, Chick-fil-A, In-N-Out Burger, and some of the most profitable places have low turnover rates because they attract great people and they keep them. That's a big deal. So, yeah, pay your employees well. As a small business owner, pay your employees well. I'm going to revisit the next podcast. I'm going to revisit the whole idea of competitive compensation and how you take good, crazy care of your employees. How you build jobs up and how you build people up and bring people in and even training employees. How to pay them well while still having them be happy and still making money. There's ways to do it. I'm going to talk about that because, again, I don't want to sound like a just Eeyore, depressed and sad and upset and gloomy about all this stuff. No. I'm not gloomy about it at all. I'm just saying that these are issues you need to consider. And basically, in order to avoid being destroyed by government-mandated minimums, you pay more to start with. You build your business on paying people well, on hiring the best people you can and keeping them by becoming creative with your compensation package. And I've talked about this before, but I think now is a good time to talk about it again. Anyway, I've been your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor. If today's episode added value to your day, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and consider giving us a stellar 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. Whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, or more. And remember, if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, I will personally read it out in the next episode. To support the show, you can make a one-time gift by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/bootstrap, donate through PayPal at paypal.me/IOCPOD, or make a contribution on our Patreon page at patreon.com/IOCPOD. Your support keeps the episodes coming. For even more content and exclusive perks, join our Patreon community at patreon.com/IOCPod. Patrons enjoy ad-free episodes, access to our private Discord server, early content previews, and a lot more. And here's an exciting offer. Get your free trial of our $5 a month Bootstrapper Community Explorer tier. This exclusive tier grants you ad-free content, Discord server access, and early content previews. Join us and be part of the inner circle. If you're feeling more generous, those who join tiers $25 a month and up will have a chance to be a featured guest on this podcast. A massive thank you to Wintergotten for generously providing the incredible intro and outro music at no cost. We appreciate their support. Be sure to check out Wintergotten's amazing work on YouTube at youtube.com/@Wintergotten. Until next time, I'm your friendly neighborhood entrepreneur, Isaiah O'Connor, signing off. This is the O'Connor Bootstrap Podcast, brought to you by Athos Business Solutions. For our companion podcast, the Athos Business Podcast, hosted by Jason St. Clair, along with past episodes and related blogs, visit our website at athos.com. That's ATHEOZ.com or theoz.com. Goodbye for now.